Sup everybody, it's EsAnneKay and I don't have a segue into this. Guest characters in fighting games. If you play fighting games, chances are you've played at least one with a guest character, and chances are that character there was some cross-promotional intent. I.e., they're from something the involved companies want the game's players to buy/consume, usually a game, movie, or TV show of some kind. Every now and then, however, you'll get one that's a bit different in the sense that the guest character isn't so much a character as they are a real person. Usually there's also some sort of cross-promotional shenanigans involved, as we'll soon see, but before we dive into that, let's lay down some ground rules for the kind of combatants we're talking about. First off, I'm talking about guest characters, meaning these guys appear in games in which they or their associated brands are not the core focus. Shaquille O'Neal is no more of a guest in Shaq Fu than Jackie Chan is in the Kung Fu Master Jackie Chan, so neither of those will be discussed here. And since all the artists in Def Jam 5 for New York not only make up the majority of the roster, but are also all under the Def Jam label, they don't count either. Also, this isn't counting cases where real people portray characters depicted in the games, because if we did that, almost everyone from Mortal Kombat would be eligible. This also means you won't see characters like Negan or Victor Chevalier despite being played by and modeled after famous actors. This even extends to pastiches of such people, so characters like Fei Long or Mike Bison/Balrog/Boxer won't be showing up either. Nor will anyone from Dive Kick. Also, the characters must be playable in the games they're guest appearing in. In other words, the Snoop Dogg stage in Tekken Tag 2 need not apply. Okay, I think that's everything. Let's get to our first character.
LeBron James.
Starting off with the most recent and possibly the most well-known example of this kind of character, we have LeBron James as he appears in Multiverses, the game that after 2 years still can't seem to decide if it's so over or so back. Portrayed by not LeBron James, the King is based primarily on his depiction in Space Jam 2, which released just a couple weeks before he was added to the game. Yeah, the cross-promotion angle here is both obvious and arguably at its most cynical, at least as far as this list goes. Anyway, LeBron is a bruiser, one of the 4, formerly 5 categories the game assigns to its fighters as a general representation of their playstyles and attributes. Bruisers are the kind of characters who like getting up close and hitting you really hard, and LeBron can do that, but he puts a spin on the concept. When he's got a basketball on hand, he has all those hard-hitting normals you'd expect of a bruiser, but each of his specials allow him to toss the ball as a projectile. This gives him a lot more range than your average bruiser, but it also costs him the ball, making his normals far weaker until he gets the ball back or until another one spawns for him. This might not sound like the best trade-off in the world, but with the right setup, he can do goofy stuff like this, so, that's pretty cool. Then again, lots of characters in this game have that kind of jank, so is it really worth the effort? Who knows. Either way, of all the characters in this game, and that we'll be talking about today, LeBron is definitely one of them.
Marvel!
Going from the latest example I'm aware of to the earliest one I'm aware of, Marvel Superheroes launched in 1997 with a character who was decidedly not a Street Fighter nor a Marvel superhero. The creation of this particular peculiarity is actually surprisingly well documented, with tweets from the game's creators and a full-blown documentary showing how Capcom collaborated with the real-life Norimaro. Except he's not called Norimaro in real life, he is instead the comedian, painter, and former pop star Noritaka Kinashi, which admittedly makes this a bit of an edge case going by my rules. I did say the candidates couldn't just be pastiches of celebrities, nor would it count if they were fictional characters portrayed by said celebrities, and Norimaro was kinda both of those things. But unlike the characters played by Mortal Kombat celebrity guests, Norimaro was created specifically for Kinashi, and unlike, say, Victor Chevalier, Kinashi actually owns part of the character's copyright, and he can't reappear in anything without Kinashi's approval. So as far as the official channels are concerned, I'm making the call that he is, for all intents and purposes, a real-life guest character. At least more so than those other non-examples. Now, being a comedian, Norimaro's moveset and presentation are very silly. He sends stuff flying out of his handbag, he rushes at you while flailing his arms like Bart Simpson, his face turns all big and red during his dash animation for some reason, and just look at this dude's stance. In the pre-release versions of this game, he even had a concho attack, and if you don't know what a concho is, this trained medical professional will be happy to demonstrate. This attack was removed from the final game along with Norimaro himself, at least overseas. Yeah, Marvel wasn't too keen on the idea that their iconic superheroes could potentially get wrecked in bracket by a character like this, and the only way Capcom was allowed to go through with him being in the game at all was that he'd only be playable in Japan. But if you go into the game's files, his win quotes, arcade ending, and even his text-based animations all have full English translations, suggesting that up until fairly late into development, Norimaro was meant to be playable in all regions. Of course, this didn't happen, and it looks like he's even getting scrubbed from the fighting collection, but his legacy still sorta lives on. You see, among the other moves I mentioned earlier, he also has one that involves slipping on a banana peel. Classic gag. Now, I think I played enough Ace Attorney to say confidently that no, at no point does Phoenix Wright ever slip on a banana peel in those games, but that somehow became one of his moves in Ultimate Marvel 3, which I can only assume is a direct nod to Norimaro. And thinking about it, that alone might actually make Norimaro the most influential character on this list, so that's pretty neat. Not bad for a character who very nearly did not exist in these games at all.
Bob.
Alright, so Multiverses and Marvel are pretty well known, but how many of you have heard of Power Instinct? Developed and published by Atlas, yes, that Atlas, the series lasted from the mid-90s all the way to the late 2000s, and featured such characters as a guy who enters a fighting tournament looking for dates, a child whose name I will not be mentioning because I'm convinced looking him up will put you on a watch list, and Sonic Fox. Yeah, in a genre that can already get kinda weird and goofy at times, this one manages to cement itself firmly in the extreme half of that spectrum, which might explain their choice for the new final boss in the PS2 port of Power Instinct's Macho Melee, Bobby, or as I like to call him, Norimaru 2 Electric Boogaloo. You see, the story with this guy is actually pretty similar to Norimaru's. Bobby Konda, better known as Bobby Ologan, was born in Nigeria, but he became a Japanese celebrity well known for his comedy. One popular series of skits he was involved in had him trying out different jobs he had no experience in whatsoever, and in 2003, one of those jobs was being an MMA heavyweight kickboxer, which, as it turned out, he was surprisingly good at, and he ended up making a career out of it. He won the majority of his fights, though there were admittedly rather few of them. Now, Bobby's reputation as a fighter, a comic, and a person in general is, putting it nicely, a little spotty. And for the record, I am in no position to comment on the validity of any of this, but setting that aside, you can see why Atlas figured a goofy fighter would be a good fit for a goofy fighter. They even got him to help promote the game for them. Now, the reason I call him Norimaru 2 is that his moveset doesn't involve as many actual fighting techniques as you would expect from an MMA fighter, and his animations play up his silly side a lot. He even gets an enlarged head for some of them, which makes me suspect that Norimaru might have been an inspiration for this character, but until I hear anything confirming this one way or the other, that's all it is, a suspicion. Though if it is true, then it kinda gives even more credence to the idea that Norimaru might be the most influential real-world guest character in this genre. Alright, I don't want to spend all my time on Bobby talking about someone else. So, Bobby. Without getting into any of the real-world stuff, the fighting game character's kinda neat. I'm starting to regret this video already. Obama! Remember last month at Summer Games Fest when Terry and Mai were revealed for Street Fighter 6? That was a pretty historic moment. It was the first time the mainline series had a guest character who wasn't from another Capcom franchise like Final Fight or Rival Schools. Outside of the mainline series, however, that's not true at all. Case in point, Street Fighter Online Mouse Generation, a versus-style fighting game released for the PC controlled by moving the cursor back and forth to move and clicking to use your attacks. Now, this game was only released in Japan, and it's lost media now, so I can't tell you from any personal experience whether or not that's as god-awful as it sounds, but what I can tell you is that despite the title, there aren't a lot of Street Fighter characters in this Street Fighter game. You only got 5 of them, 6 if you want to count Akira, even though she wouldn't be added to the mainline series for another decade or so. But after that, you got characters from Cyborg 009, Detroit Metal City, Space Sheriff Gavan, Chinese novelist Jin Yong, and yes, the character who made you wonder if you were hearing the beginning of this section correctly, then US President Barack Obama, who was added to the game as part of a Valentine's Day themed DLC season, of all things. Why exactly, I have no idea whatsoever. Unfortunately, I also can't really tell you anything about how he fights in this game because, simply put, surviving footage of Mouse Generation is scarce and I could not find any with people actually playing as Obama, so the only proof we have that he was actually in the game is some promotional material. Even so, hopefully the knowledge that Barack Obama has personally punched Ryu in the face can join the knowledge that Joe Biden is one of Guilty Gear X2's best chip players on the list of things that'll help you sleep better tonight. This has been EsAnneKay. Thank you all for watching.